Hello and welcome to Dig It. I'm Peter Brown and hosting the show with me today is Chris Day. Hi Chris.
Hi Peter.
So, March in the garden. It's been dry, hasn't it, Chris? I've been out watering my snowdrops and trying to keep the pots of bulbs going recently. How's your garden been?
It's been very dry actually. Yeah, I've got quite a lot of container plants and they've had a bit of a douse of water, and also as we're finding on the nursery here, even where the bare root plants are now, even the soil around those is incredibly dry. So we're having to give them a little bit of water. Catch-22 really, because we're trying to hold everything in sort of suspense at the moment, as we are still in the effectively the dormant season. However, plants have got their own agenda, haven't they?
Need
they want to grow
because presumably it's going to hold back the trees, will it, a bit with
It will.
re-leafing and things like that? I mean, they're going to be struggling to get the water they need to grow all the new foliage.
That's right, yeah. So you've got a balance really, but certainly when it comes to coming to actually doing your planting in your garden, then obviously that's another issue, isn't it? You've got to really prepare the soil well, get lots of organic matter in as you plant as well. But we're in a good sort of time really, because it's been comparatively mild, as we know. Then there's no reason why we can't get going in a good way, in a positive way, and actually get ahead of ourselves as far as the jobs in the garden to be done.
That's true. But equally, one of my favourite things that we sell in the garden centre this time of the year, sledges.
Oh,
They're
yes.
not selling well this year.
It's not been a good year for them, has it? No.
No.
Yeah.
And on a much sadder note, a couple of condolences, I suppose, really. A few big names out of the garden centre industry have unfortunately passed away. Alistair Jackson from Poplar's Garden Centre,
Yes.
fairly local to us. I mean, he's a great chap, lovely sense of humour. And
Fantastic, yeah, lovely chap. I had the honour of working with him many years ago, Peter, as a Gardener's Question Time for BBC Three Counties Radio. We did an outside broadcast. This is probably going back 10 years, and that's the first time I met him. And we had a good chuckle and a really good audience. But he certainly knew his stuff. So a real sad loss to his family and friends, and of course to the garden centre as well.
I think so. And Paul Coolings, I mean, that's a big name, isn't it?
Yeah, so
Coolings Nurseries.
well known, sort of the southeast, aren't they? Sort of Kent sort of area, yeah, and big garden centre group, and well known for their amazing amount of growing they used to do, sort of, and still do behind the scenes as well. So
A couple of big losses. So our condolences there.
Indeed.
And moving forward then, Chris, so what we got coming up? What's in the diary?
The diary, yeah. Well, we have got a big date after our Graft and Grow last month, Peter, which was obviously...
That was a massive success. I couldn't believe how many people came in.
It was mad. It was crazy. I've never seen queues for grafting taking a reasonable amount of time, and not too long. People weren't waiting around too long. But having said that, it was a lovely, amazing atmosphere, which was great, and people really enjoyed the event, and obviously getting their wonderful scionwood attached to the right rootstock.
Well, hopefully they'll all be growing lots more fruit trees, and it'll all be successful. Because I guess what's sort of the average percentage take on a graft? Would you expect sort of 80-90%?
I think in that region, PC, it's pretty good. I mean, usually it's weather issues or animals nibbling at the graft causes the problems, or some severe weather, which fingers crossed we're going to be fine with. And as long as the plants are given plenty of moisture and they don't get stressed, they're usually absolutely fine, because you're putting the tissue of a very vigorous rootstock with the tissue of a variety which wants to grow. So it's a perfect marriage.
They do have a good take then. That's good.
Generally, yes.
Excellent. So it's Orchid Day coming up, isn't it?
It is. And for the first time, we're running the Orchid Day at the Garden Centre on a Saturday, which would be quite nice. So we thought it would be good, maybe attract a different audience, maybe a more family-orientated audience to enjoy orchids rather than during the week. And so we've got Manas, of course, one of our first guests on the
He was one of our very early guests in the podcast, wasn't he? And he gave us some brilliant tips back. I say 2001, was
2001, yes.
Yeah, a long while ago.
Yeah, so he'll be here. The event starts at 11, Peter, and he's doing a couple of talks at 11 and 2. directly after his talks, he does his orchid clinic,
Yes.
which is famous for his orchid MOTs. So don't bring your car for it, bring your orchids.
Bring your orchid. I remember last time he came here, I presented him with one of mine, and he wasn't too scathing about it. He said, yeah, it was quite healthy and it was okay, and could do with a repotting, but I was very pleased by that. I thought, that's good news for me then. I can look after orchids.
That's good. So it will no doubt be kept very busy. So on that Saturday and that weekend, we'll obviously have some nice orchids on sale as well. So it'll be a good opportunity to replenish your orchid stocks too.
Yeah, because from memory, he's really into his cymbidiums. Isn't he?
He likes his cymbidiums, yes. Yeah.
Phalaenopsis he knows masses about, but cymbidiums are his passion from memory.
Definitely, yes. So it'd be great to see him again, and as I say, he's here till around about late afternoon, so around about 3-4 o'clock. So a good few hours to get to tap into his amazing orchid knowledge.
Yeah, so bring your orchids in if you need some help with them, and he'll give you some pointers on how to make them grow better.
Indeed. And then just a shout out really for Gardener's World presenter Adam Frost. Obviously he's famous for co-presenting with Monty. He's on a nationwide tour this month, and just a few dates. 17th of March is over at the Exeter Coin Exchange, Saturday the 18th over at the Lighthouse Theatre in Poole. Wednesday the 29th he's over at the Wyvern Theatre in Swindon, and on the 30th of March he's over at the Lighthouse Theatre in Kettering. So he's out and about. So apparently it's a good evening. It is a proper evening with him, so I'm sure he'll answer your gardening questions as well. So we'll put the link on how to get tickets if it's not already sold out.
That's always the trouble with these events, isn't it? You get a good speaker like that. They will sell out fast.
They do,
brilliant, good stuff. And then we've got a rare plant fair.
Yeah, I think this. I was looking through the diary, Peter. I think this is the first of the season. I might be wrong because I know over some of the snowdrop weekends you sometimes get them, but this is the first official one, and it's over at the Bishop's Palace over in Wells in Somerset. A beautiful garden. It was on Gardener's World last year. I saw it for the first time, and I really want to go when I'm back in that part of the world. It looks very, very nice. It's sort of a partly wall garden, but obviously a perfect venue for finding more unusual plants as well. So, 14 acres, and there's quite a few big name sort of specialist nurseries. Avon Bulbs, Potterton's nurseries are there. So good for, if you're looking for something really, really unusual with your information. Again, we'll put the link on the show notes to how to find out more about more rare plant fairs, obviously in March and beyond.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Thank you. And moving on from rare plants, I noticed in the news we've got Thames Water and several of the water companies now installing sort of flood defences in towns. And it's a really good idea, isn't it, Chris? So basically planters, aren't they? They're sort of, that also double up as sort of storm drains, I suppose, that collect the...
They describe them as floral soakaways, which I think is a lovely sort of turn of phrase, isn't it? So basically, strips of soil which are beautifully planted with the right type of plants. I think the whole idea of this is to make sure that the right type of plants are installed, which will obviously take the extra amounts of rain these areas will obviously get, assuming that we do get some rain this year.
Well, that's it, isn't it? But then I suppose that's the trouble with all the tarmac and concrete everywhere these days, that it makes the runoff go that much quicker down into the drains, and then the drains all flood and causes damage everywhere. So I suppose if we can slow the water down a little bit and create some planters, that's a really good thing.
Yeah, and when you look at the list of plants they're using, it's not, plants which we sell in all garden centres, things like the daylilies, the Amaracales there's Siberian iris, obviously herbaceous geraniums. These are all good doers, and of course ornamental grasses. So it's almost going down that sort of prairie style planting. If it is dry, they will survive. However, they will take up the moisture
when it gets flooded.
Yeah, so it's a catch-22. And it's interesting that they're saying that even areas are more susceptible to flooding, but it includes schools as well, which I didn't realise that many schools were troubled by flooding. They're suggesting, I think it's around about 100, isn't it, in the article?
Yeah, in London, they've put 800 of these planters in around these schools. So hopefully that'll help curb the problem.
Indeed.
And I see George Plumtree, who we interviewed a couple of weeks ago.
Indeed.
He's head of the NGS, or National Garden Scheme. He's in the news again. They've managed to get another 574 new venues.
Yeah, first timers
to open across the country this year. That's going to be brilliant, isn't it?
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's ever growing, isn't it? So that's over 4,000 gardens now are open to the general public through the NGS scheme, which is quite amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's such a huge number.
Our local lady who organises the open gardens around our way was trying to recruit new gardens for the scheme. So I guess it was obviously a big drive this year to get some more fresh blood into the
Indeed.
system. But it's brilliant. I love it as a scheme, and it's so nice to go and see some decent gardens that are just on your doorstep.
Indeed, and it's just worth reminding our listeners that it's easy to go onto the website at NGS, and you can even just tap in your location and 10, 15, 20 mile radius of where you live. Yep. And you can home into very local gardens. And if you're going on holiday, plan your holiday. If you got in the UK, try and get one or two gardens on your holiday as well.
That's a good idea. I'd not thought of that. Yeah, because go and find some tea and cake in a nice garden near where you're going on holiday. That's a brilliant idea, Chris. I love that. The government is cracking down on illegal imported plants, I see, Chris.
Yes, big headline, isn't it? And basically it's to stop these online plant traders, stopping these nasty diseases coming in via imports. And it's important, isn't it? Biosecurity. We might see the signs when we go on holiday at the airport or when we're taking a ferry across the water, but really, we all need to be aware that plants have to be checked rigorously now.
And so they should be. I mean, you think of things like Xylella and Dutch elm disease. Yep. Look at the name. Where did it? Nothing against the Dutch, but I think it came from the sort of Northern Europe over across the water, and then absolutely decimated all our elm trees. Now, obviously, we've got Xylella that's coming over. Now, that's olive trees.
That's olive trees, yes. Not over here yet. We just don't want it. But no, olive trees, olive groves especially. And its range of plants include things like rosemary. So if it got over here, it would decimate our rosemary patches and our rosemary hedges, as well as obviously olive trees and everything associated in that group. So it isn't good news. But the inspection works, and obviously as a garden centre, we are inspected regularly.
Yeah, we have our annual inspections, and I think we can proudly say that when the inspectors came round to us this year, we were the first nursery that they'd inspected that had actually done everything correctly and got 100% on all the tests, as it were. So,
and a nice gold star, apparently, which is even better.
It's a massive well done to us, I suppose. But equally, I think at the end of the day, we've got a massive responsibility. We're importing plants wherever possible. Obviously, we buy English plants and sell English plants, but unfortunately, due to the economics of supply and demand, sometimes
and availability as well, isn't it? Yes, yeah. I'll just quote as well. Graham Spencer, he's the director of Plant Breeders' Rights. So that's obviously very important. Obviously, a lot of the new plants which come over obviously have a royalty attached to them. Yep. He's saying that unscrupulous dealers even mislabel plant parcels to avoid detection from authorities. So that's even worse, isn't it? That's deception on a really big scale. So, and as he said, you'll never stop it. But obviously, making the complexities and expensive plant health certificates for some rare plant activities encourages illegal smuggling. So, try and buy from a reputable supplier wherever always buy from a reputable supplier.
And check your plants have got a passport number on them. That's a simple way. Whenever you're buying plants, if they haven't got the passport, then question it.
It's interesting, Peter. Already I've had a few customers, even this year, and we're only a number of weeks into 2023, saying about plant passports. Well, are we aware of them? Which is quite an interesting conversation. I said, well, yes. And if you buy most plants, on all the plants, it will have a passport number on it somewhere where it's traceable.
Well, it's a brilliant system.
It is.
If it's used and kept up to date, and I think that's it, isn't it? It's making sure everyone complies with it. So well done, the government, for doing a little crackdown.
Indeed.
I'm so pleased you found this one, Chris. Welsh leeks have finally become Welsh.
Yes, officially.
I always thought it was the daffodil that they were championing.
Oh,
but
no, not
apparently
today.
not anymore.
No.
They're now into their leeks, and they
Yeah.
have decided to take all leeks that are grown in Wales to be Welsh leeks.
Indeed.
So
And they're protected as that, yes.
not
So
specific varieties, but all of them.
I know, it's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah, so this is the protected geographical indication status. So
Okay.
we think about, Milton Mowbray pies, Jersey Royal potatoes.
Not international kidneys.
No, well, that's the variety you would buy at the garden centre. Oh, dear. Yeah.
But you've got to have the right seaweed, and they've got to be grown in Jersey.
In Jersey,
on a hill.
On a hill.
Definitely, to
Yeah.
become a
so many
Jersey
feet
Royal,
above
but
sea level. Yeah.
That's it. And like you say, the cheddar cheese. Now, does that have to come from the Cheddar Gorge?
Well, it's not a huge place, is it? I mean, I've been there a few times.
I've driven up it. I've never seen a cheese factory on it.
No, not at all. No.
So it must be an area again.
I think
suppose.
so. But it is all about this geographical location, isn't it? But, well, finally, as you say, that the Welsh have got their Welsh leek. I mean, I think it's a bit bizarre because I thought it would be a specific variety of leek, to be honest with you.
And I see the Newt in Somerset. Or is it the Newt Hotel?
And gardens.
Yeah, they're in the news again. I mean, they're sponsors of Chelsea Flower Show, aren't
They are
they?
at the moment, yes. I think the next 2 or 3 years, if memory serves me correctly, Peter. Yeah, so it's in a lovely part of Somerset. And
Right.
it's come to the fore, basically, because it's got, obviously, now 300 apple varieties to create this new national collection. So...
Have they got the national collection, have they?
Yeah.
That's I mean, looking at the pictures, it's a stunning way of planting them all. I mean, brilliant. And I think that's where you get to see where espaliers and sort of trained fruit
most definitely.
makes such a difference to letting it grow to be a full-grown tree. I mean, you could imagine walking around there picking hundreds of apples at waist and sort of shoulder height, which is perfect.
You're right, actually, and it takes you away from the concept of having an orchard. This is a way of utilising space in a very spectacular way. It is basically a sort of series of circles, and it's very artistically designed, and you walk round effectively in a circular pathway. And the fruit trees follow you, basically. They are set out and trained, as you say, in various forms where they're using the space, their aerial space. So they're not actually growing out as such, they're just growing against and creating this amazing, what they call it, parabola is the term for the area. But it is, a work of genius because it is so different to what you'd expect a apple orchard to look like.
I mean, I wondered, is it Andy Lewis, the head of fruit there? He must have scratched his head a bit before he came up with that design because it's a really clever one. But I think from memory, they do a whole load of like different sort of days out, and you can learn about beekeeping, you can learn about sort of growing herbs and quite a few other ones from memory. I haven't been on their website for a while, but it looks like a lovely place to go.
And they've got a really good, if you're into your vegetable gardening and you want to see, different sort of display ways of growing veg, they've got a really nice setup there too. So lots of ideas. You come away very enthused. And also herbaceous plants. They like the herbaceous borders and things, but done in a very small garden way. So very attainable.
Brilliant.
And it's worth a look. And obviously they will obviously be encouraging us to grow some of these more unusual varieties too, which is brilliant.
And just thinking about that a little bit more, I guess if you want to go and visit, you don't have to actually be a guest of the hotel or eating in their restaurant. You can just go and pay your entrance fee and go and have a look around, can't you?
There's plenty to see, and they've got a cider area as well because they do a lot of cider pressing. And they've got a nice restaurant. So it's a good full day out, really. And obviously, if you wanted to stay in the hotel, well, that would be extra, I would say.
And just thinking about sort of fancy shaped trees and how to make hedges and things like that. Box Faulkner is sort of in the news at the moment for being... Now, is it resistant or is it...
blight? Yes, it's got a blight resistance to it, yes.
Okay.
So, which is good.
Because box blight is that where the leaves are going yellow?
They go yellow and then they defoliate, so you get these long stems of completely denuded stems.
Right.
and they can go almost like a straw colour before they eventually fall off. So it's
Okay.
quite a nasty way.
And
of
that
going.
kills the plant eventually, doesn't it?
It does ultimately. I mean, if you get a little bit of box blight, you can usually trim it out, and of course you can spray now. There's Fungus Fighter, which we all sell now in the garden centre trade, has got a certain amount of persistence to box blight. So there is a chemical control out there. However,
But if you want to plant a new hedge, maybe go with Faulkner.
yeah, Falconer is often sort of touted, and it's come out well. So the reason for this story is that the good old Levins Hall up in Cumbria, which I think we've mentioned before, haven't we? Because the amazing topiary there, it's in the Guinness Book of Records for the number of topiarised yew and obviously box.
Yep.
They're looking to replace lots of yew of box. In fact, about a mile of it apparently. So that's a mile. That is scary, isn't it? But they tried Japanese holly, which is the Ilex crenata, but they found it didn't grow particularly well, and that's something we've found at the garden centre here. It doesn't seem to like clay soils. Give it a nice sandy soil, and it seems to do okay. So now they've gone down the route of looking at different box resistant varieties, which of course Falconer and another variety called John Baldwin is another. So so don't give up on your box.
Brilliant. And I guess what that'll probably mean is in 10 years' time, we'll start seeing nice big topiary balls of box coming through the garden centre in those varieties rather than the standard
ones. One would hope
ones.
so, yes. Yeah, and then, of course, the Dutch are leaders in a lot of the plant breeding of things like box. So it'll probably come from Holland, which would be good because they are the masters of growing really good box in all shapes and sizes.
Excellent. That's good news then. And the latest news from the Allotment Society, is it? Or National Allotment Society.
That's right. NES, they've produced their new report, Peter, the 21st Century Allotment. So these are the things we are going to expect to see on allotments in the future.
Right, okay.
The news story starts: sheds, toilets and plastic polycarbonate greenhouses on new allotments are in. However, glass greenhouses and bonfires are out. That's
really? Okay.
That's the sort of opening statement. So
we're now looking at putting composting toilets on every allotment, are we? Or just the odd one?
Those people who need one, I would say, depending on the demographics.
The idea of it. It's an interesting concept. But sheds, I mean, everyone's got a shed on their allotment, haven't they?
They have.
That's part of the right of having a allotment, is you have a shed on it. And you can go and sit and drink tea in it. And
indeed, yes.
Enjoy the sun.
Indeed. And yes, but the whole idea of this is that they're suggesting in these guidelines that today's allotment user tends to be younger families, which obviously have children, so it needs a slightly different approach. So maybe over the next couple of decades that might be taken in, but I think you're going to get a bit of there's a lot of hard, fast allotment years are going to be quite...
Polycarbonate greenhouses. Basically what happens on our site is when you want to move off, you sell your greenhouse, and somebody else buys it, and the greenhouses just go round and round and round.
Exactly.
And if you break a panel of glass, you just buy a new one. And to be fair, the plastic sort of tarpaulins and things that are made over PVC plumbing pipes generally blow away every winter and just make a mess. And
So that's recycling, isn't it? If you're passing or selling on your greenhouse, that's a good way of recycling or upcycling. Your I don't know. It seems a bit interesting to say the least, but I suppose at the end of the day, it's all about sustainability, isn't it? But there's
and bonfires are out. I mean, that, to be fair, I don't disagree with, because there's nothing worse than when you're working and sort of a couple of allotments down there having a good old bonfire and all you can smell is smoke and
and I mean, a lot of that material, Peter, should be composted anyway, I suspect. So maybe that should be promoted. So I don't see the word compost. I mean, we've seen composted toilets highlighted, but actually
no compost
heaps. Well, that's missing a trick there, I think.
Definitely. Well, I'm pleased to say my compost heap is now already about a foot tall. I built it about a month ago now.
I remember you saying.
I lined it with cardboard.
Yes.
And,
thanks, Charles Spalding.
Thanks to Charles. And I've put some holly in it, some sort of semi-rotten leaves that I've vacuumed up from around the lawn.
Excellent.
And yeah, just some general
Yep.
clippings off the garden. So yeah, it's starting to build up. We'll
That's
have
good.
to see how it does, but I'm hopeful it'll be a good source of compost for my no dig challenge.
Indeed. More on that to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. Although it hasn't been that cold this winter yet. I mean, I say yet because we sometimes have snow in March, don't we?
We do.
I mean, birds have obviously been eating all the bird food we've been putting out, but the RSPB are crying out for making sure that we're sterilising all our bird feeders and keeping everything clean, aren't they?
Indeed, to basically fight the avian flu, which has obviously been a major problem right through for a year or two now, hasn't it? It seems to have been a major issue
Well,
with
I think the
with
last
heads.
thing I heard from DEFRA was about, I would say a month ago, they were quarantining all of the chickens again, so they all had to go back inside, whereas they've been allowed out in sort of different areas. But yeah, I mean, it's like you say, a couple of years now that avian flu's been a major, major problem. And it's when we think of bird flu, it's the whole society of birds, isn't it?
Yes.
It's not just the nice little robins and finches that we see on the bird feeders. It's things like the owls and all the
Indeed, yeah.
seabirds and I mean
Birds of prey and such like, isn't it? Which have a hit there. But certainly, I know in my own garden, Peter, keeping everything clean is a priority, especially if you're putting lots of bird food out as well, isn't it? It's getting that balance in there. So, I mean, bird feeders, when they're empty, just give them a little bit of disinfectant and off you go again. Just try and keep everything as clean as possible. And and obviously thinking ahead to making sure that we're going to be planting plenty of bird-friendly plants in our gardens. If not this time of the year, if you're putting in new hedge line, make sure it's got plenty of berries and hips on it to keep the birds happy through through next winter.
Yeah, because I mean, springs obviously they start breeding soon, and that's when I guess it's even more important to make sure that we do keep everything spick and span.
Indeed.
The really sad news, Chris, I see Grow Your Own magazine is it the last one this month, or is it already finished?
This month will be its final edition, which is really sad.
A shame.
Yes, so this is DC Thompson, the publishers have culled, I think, nearly 30 titles. They do a lot of them are sort of knitwear and crafts,
Crafty magazines.
Crafty magazine.
I mean, this was a really good one.
It
I always
was.
remember, like, whenever you see it, and it's sort of there's a free bag of bulbs or there's a free bunch of seeds in it, or it was always encouraging you to get on and plant things. It was a lovely, positive magazine.
It was a very, very practical sort of compost under your fingernails type, and always had free seeds on the cover, certainly to get you enticed. But I think it did really well, and I think if memory serves me correctly, it's been out for about 15 years or so. Okay. On the back of when we had obviously the big sort of recession of the 2018, the sort of crash there. Then of course a lot of people were feeling the pinch, and austerity was there, and Grow Your Own, as we know, came into the fore. I remember how much vegetables we used to sell then and continue to do now, plug plants and such like, and seeds. So it was a magazine of its time, but perhaps, like so many things, people are getting the information now online.
I guess that's it. It's easier to watch a YouTube video than have to pick up a magazine and read it.
And we know, monthly gardening magazines obviously have been, the numbers have been dropping. I mean, Gardener's World perhaps is the exception to the rule there, but as somebody once said to me, you only have to buy a year's supply of a gardening magazine. I just look back each year. I mean, that's a very cynical way of doing it, but I suppose it's true with something like Grow Your Own. Things don't really change.
Well, listeners, if you're getting bored, this is the second season, so
yep.
But I really hope that's not the case. Is it?
No, we have plenty of new guests and new content to make it more interesting.
It. And there's always something new. I mean, you think box blight that we were talking about earlier, that didn't exist.
No.
Well, it has always existed, I think, but it's not been in the forefront of the issues that we've had to deal with as gardeners. And
that's right, yeah.
All these lovely new bedding varieties that we get in each year. If you want to learn about that, I guess it's worth carrying on listening.
Yeah, and that to me, Peter, is why magazines should continue, because they've got to report that sort of material. If people are just relying on YouTube and even podcasts for their advice, magazines are still a very vital way of getting that information across. So, but it is very sad, and obviously I think there was about 6 or 7 editorial staff on board that magazine as well, and it had some really good, strong, gardening writers. A lot of them RHS, a lot of them sort of celebrity writers too. So
David Dominy.
He was down there, and I think Anne Swithenbank or one of the good pedigree of writers too. So obviously,
What a shame.
It is a shame. Yeah,
Maybe someone else will pick up the mantle and run with it.
Well,
bring a new one out.
One would hope there would be a marketplace for. I mean, there used to be a magazine called Kitchen Garden, which I know didn't have a particularly long life because Grow Your Own magazine was so good. It was its rival. So for survival of the fittest, I suppose at the end of the day, in every competitive element of business.
Yep, that's it. And not weeds in headlines again. So I see Bridgend Council have been a bit lax in their knotweed control, and it's been growing into their neighbours, hasn't it?
Yeah, so basically this happened, basically this knotweed infested into somebody's garden, created basically a nuisance.
Yep.
To the point where the landowner of the property has managed to win a legal fight because of this knotweed encroaching on from council land. I think this is the first time, Peter, that knotweed has actually obviously paid off for somebody in a way, in the nicest possible way. However, it does sort of set a precedent, doesn't it? If you've got knotweed on council land and your property is unfortunately you've got a right to
claim against the council. Like you say, it is interesting because fundamentally, I mean, knotweed must be. I guess it spreads by division.
Pieces, yes.
But equally, if it comes out in, say, a bird dropping, how does that? If it was eating your neighbour's knotweed and then it pops up the other side of the garden,
that would be I think you'd have to sort of prove that you've got basically a forestation of knotweed behind your fence trying to encroach your land. I think you'd have to prove it that way, which obviously the gentleman did. So,
fair play. I mean, why not? It's an absolute menace when you've got neighbours who've got sort of plants that are overgrowing your property and you're always having to trim them back and this sort of thing. I think fair play to him. Why not?
And I think, as we know, the financial burden cost, if it does get into your property or your land and your property, your house, is
it absolutely devastates sort of people, doesn't it? I mean, if it gets into your house, it makes the house sort of unmortgageable, and you end up having to sort of take parts of your house down to get rid of it sometimes. It's incredible.
So I think indeed. I think it sets quite a good precedent now that hopefully other authorities will look very warily at this and hopefully
pay a bit more attention to when they've got knotweed on their land.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, not good.
And this month's top 5, we're going to give you root wrap roses.
Indeed. So these pieces of roses we sell really from October right through till the end of this month, end of March into April. They're
similar to the bare-rooted sort of hedging season, and they come essentially, as the name suggests, root wrap. So it's a root that's wrapped in a bit of compost and then sort of wrapped in a plastic bag.
A biodegradable bag, which is all good. Yes,
excellent. And if you're going to plant them, how would you plant them? Is it same as any other hedging plants? Dig a hole, put some organic matter in, and off you go.
That's it. Yes. So with roses, you normally go down to with roses. It's quite important to actually put them to the same or a little bit deeper than they are. The usual indicator is the grafting point, isn't it? So make sure that's just slightly buried under the soil level. And obviously the compost you've got with the plant will be perfect to add to the soil in your planting hole. But just work a little bit of bone meal or bloodfish and bone in there as well, and maybe a little bit of root grow if you're creating a new rose bed, perhaps.
Yep.
A lot of people want to create rose beds and they're worried about rose sickness. So root grow, mycorrhizal is a good way of making sure that those problems don't rear their ugly head and cause problems. So that's good. But our top 5 pieces is quite interesting. It's a real eclectic mix of varieties.
Okay.
Yeah. So at number 5, Rose Rambling Rector.
Brilliant.
It's a big rose in every sense of the word. It grows 25, 30 foot tall, so perfect for growing into hedges or wherever you want to train it, skyward. At number 4, we've got a variety Rose Hopes and Dreams,
Okay.
which is a new one to me. It's a very fragrant lilac blooming HT, so good variety.
Hybrid tea.
Hybrid tea.
That's HT, isn't it?
HT, hybrid tea, that's the one. So your perfect sort of Valentine's rose as a HT.
Yeah.
Number 3, Rose Flower Carpet White,
Okay.
which obviously a good ground cover rose. And number 2, Rose Margaret Merrill,
Yeah.
which is a floribunda, white, but it's grown wonderfully for its fragrance. It's got one of the best scented roses you can possibly buy.
Okay.
So,
And a floribunda, that's
And
the
flor-
sort of multi-head.
That's
not,
it.
Not multi-headed, multi-petal.
well, they call it cluster flowered, so lots
Yeah.
of smaller flowers, but many of them.
Okay.
And they obviously flower at different times, so you get a nice long succession of blooms.
Brilliant.
And at number 1, Flower Carpet Pink.
Okay.
So 2 flower carpets in the top 10, and that probably goes on the volume of plants we sell, but obviously a good ground cover plant. So if you're looking for something which will cover, one plant will go a metre 20 in all directions,
Yep.
and obviously will flower from June right through till October, November if you're lucky, and has really good obviously disease resistance, which makes it a really good variety too. So an interesting top 5, but
Definitely,
but very positive.
But no thornless ones yet. Yet.
No, I've awfully rambling rector. Unfortunately, they're all pretty prickly, but hey.
One day someone will come up with a thornless rose.
Yeah, I think,
Although that's half the fun of keeping roses.
it
isn't
is, and most definitely.
Great stuff. Thanks for that, Chris.
Thank you.
So, it's that time of the show where we talk about those lovely challenges that we should be getting on with.
And Peter, this list is getting longer now. We are
Spring's
into
in the air. It's always busy in spring, isn't it?
It is, yes. So,
Excellent. So what should we be doing this month then, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, let's get the tasks, the arduous tasks, the plantings out of the way and the seed sowing. So shallots, that would be good.
Yep.
Soil's nice and warm now, and that includes likes of garlic as well, and your onions. I mean, onions you need to be pretty quick off the mark. They are still available, so do grab them.
Yeah.
If you've grown some broad beans on the windowsill and they're getting to a decent height, then they need to be hardened off, acclimatised to some cooler conditions and put out, because they're one of the first crops we can start enjoying there too.
Yep.
And I suppose for the likes of a lot, people might be coming to the kitchen garden a bit late, but of course potatoes can still go.
So we can still put potato, because we're starting to run out of stocks of them at the garden centre, but certainly, and if you're going to put them, start chitting them now. Should we be putting them sort of in the kitchen on the windowsill, or should we still be trying to keep them a bit cooler?
Yeah, I mean, if your windowsill keeps to sort of 16, 18 degrees, absolutely fine. I wouldn't any warmer than that. You might get some really long extended growth, which of course you don't want. You want nice short.
Because inch and a half, 2 inches.
That's that's the recommendation.
Where are we? 6 to 8 centimetres?
Something like that, yeah. If they go too tall, there's no reason why you can't get your scissors and snip them back.
Yeah, because that's what you told me the other year.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm going to try that soon. But last year, my chits were all very stumpy, so they just went in.
That's ideal. That's But don't be afraid of doing that. And obviously, if you're growing early, the first and second early varieties, then restrict the number of chits to perhaps 3, 4, maybe 5, and probably no more than that.
Okay.
Main crop, maybe you let a few more go on there. But so that's the veggie garden. Indoor wise, obviously our houseplants are now coming out of their winter slumber, so up the watering they might need, and obviously start doing a little bit of liquid feeding as well.
Yeah, because my orchids are all, like I think I said the other month, they're nearly breaking flower now.
Good.
So I've been feeding them with some flowering feed.
Yes,
and it's only tiny amounts of orchid food that you give them.
Very strong, yes.
It hopefully will encourage them to flower for a good long time this year.
And of course, the month of March is a good time to actually repot your houseplants as well. So try and get that done over the next few weeks as well. Outdoors, get your secateurs out and maybe cut your fuchsias, your hardy fuchsias back, and of course your hydrangeas. I looked at mine the other day, Peter, and I think the weather has been so severe. Even the flowers from last year seem to have toppled off the top of the plants. It's been so cold. So go along with the secateurs and just neatly tidy up your hydrangeas. And obviously, if you're going to reduce any of your hydrangeas back, remember you might be sacrificing flower for this year. But sometimes, you've got to do that. You've got to get them into decent sort of shape too as well.
I saw some little mini bedding plug plants. They're in the shop again now, aren't they?
They are indeed,
Kinder
yes.
plants. They must be about time to think planting them up and starting your hanging baskets. And
Yes, if you've got a heated greenhouse or a nice warm porch or your conservatory, that's fine. I noticed we've also got the seedling, little plug seedlings, the lobelia and the busy lizzies. I noticed we've also got the Impatian called Beacon, which is the one which has the disease resistance to that nasty mildew. So that's a new one for us this year. So if you're potting your kinder plants up, then put them into either small sort of 9 centimetre pots or into, if the seedlings, put them into the cell trays. And obviously they'll take a bit of space up on your windowsill, just bear that in mind, but they will romp away at a good speed. But bear in mind that they are all frost tender, so you need to be a little bit careful. Protect them as well.
And the lawn, I guess, time to start mowing it already, isn't it?
Well, yes. As the weather has been dry, generally, find a nice dry day to give it a good cut. And obviously, maybe
nice and long still.
Right.
Is my first cut.
Yes.
And then you slowly reduce the cut height down.
Correct.
Don't you?
Yeah.
And I guess probably time to feed it as well. And can you sow seed yet, or is it still a bit early?
No, it'd be absolutely fine. So if you've got any patches which need overseeding, then yes, I would say probably towards the end of the month. I would say, Peter, it should be warm. But if you've given it a cut and you've surveyed your lawn seed. And obviously, if you put any lawn feed and weed down, you probably have to wait sort of 6 weeks before you can put
the new seed down.
Yeah, so give yourself a bit of time there. But
and what sort of distance? I mean, obviously, as you know, I love my fireworks. So I burnt a good hole in the ground last year.
Okay.
On the lawn. So I need to reseed that.
Yeah.
Normally I put a spring feed down. If I leave maybe half a metre around the edge of that hole, would that be okay? Or
that should be okay. Yes, yeah. I mean, if you can, to make it a good seed bed, obviously add a bit of John Innes number 3.
Yeah, because I've got to rake out all the dead grass,
right?
Take out the sort of yellow and white stuff as it is now.
Yeah.
There's a few bits that are sprouting sort of back again into life, but I think I really need to rake the majority of out and put some seed down.
Certainly, and then the secret with overseeding, Peter, is obviously apply it to where you've got obviously your seed bed, but make sure you actually put some of the seed into the existing lawn as well.
Okay.
To try and blend the two varieties of grass, because you're never going to get exactly the same lawn mixture.
No, you're very true, because I know a few years ago I put some Canada green down, and I'm sure that's is that the one that's quite wide?
Yes, quite
leaf.
It's quite resilient, isn't it? Quite tough.
Yeah, it did do very well, but it's interesting because the majority of the lawn is standard sort of fescues and
there's bent tops and things, all those
the normal sort of thin bladed grass, and I've got odd patches where I've got this sort of thicker stuff, and I'm guessing that must be the Canada green.
Probably the Canada green, but in the overall look, it's probably absolutely fine. You
don't notice it. It's only when you're really getting down and sort of close to it that you think, where's that lot come from? But it's good stuff.
And I think because it's been such a dry winter generally, we probably haven't got the issues of moss unless you're on very, very claggy soil. So weed and feed will probably do the job quite nicely.
So I don't need to scarify it this year.
Well, if you've got scarifying is good on compaction as well. So I mean, you might aerate it, but it really depends on those areas where it is well walked upon and well used. It still wouldn't be a bad idea to do that, but you get to know your lawn, you know where you're walking on it.
Where the dog walks on.
Indeed.
She leaves a nice little path down there.
That's it. Yeah. And the other thing I was going to say, Peter, is obviously we've been enjoying the snowdrops, and it's been a really good winter for snowdrops, hasn't it? They've been spectacular. So now is the time to start digging them up as the flowers fade and dividing them. So we call this basically splitting snowdrops in the green.
Okay.
So that's when they're most susceptible, most reliable for replanting. They'll establish so much better when
Right.
they've got green leaves on and they've got some nice strong roots. So do a bit of division then. You can do that same process later on with bluebells. If you've got lots of English bluebells in your garden, you want to give those a bit of a tidy up and give them a bit more space. You can lift those in the green too.
So that is that where, say you've got 20 of them in a little clump, you take 10 out and plant them a bit further apart, or is it that you're splitting them? Do the bulbs split and grow little ones off the side, and you split them in half that way? I mean, how's it work?
Yes, so they will, as individual bulbs, they will produce more bulbs as well. So if you had 20, you would lift the whole lot and then probably split them into maybe 4 groups of 5 or 5 groups of 4, and then replant those over an area where you're wanting to increase the volume of that. And then obviously you probably leave those for 3 or 4 years now, and they'll produce nice big lumps as well.
Okay, so it's just speeding up the sort of takeover of the bulbs.
That's it, and giving them a head start as well. And one little thing, if you're doing that, a little bit of compost might be useful, a bit of bone meal, and certainly a bit of root grow. Definitely, when you're moving your bulbs around, they really benefit from just a small amount of root grow over the roots as you're moving them too. You can do that with I think winter aconites as well. So if you're lucky enough to have those wonderful yellow winter aconites, you can split those in the same way too.
Good stuff.
And I suppose, yes, we're also looking at our displays on our decks and patio areas, and now's obviously a nice time to give them a bit of a spring clean, maybe add a bit more colour, inject a bit more colour too. So I noticed we're starting to get some nice early spring bedding in, so that'll be coming in, primulas and primroses in all different colours, some amazing varieties out there. There's one called Blue Zebra, which I think is amazing. It's a really unusual. It's almost like a denim blue flower. Okay. So that's good. But there's lots of different ones, and obviously the pansies and violas start coming back again, and things like ranunculus will start to appear in the next couple of weeks too. So lots of things to replant and give your pots a bit of colour.
Yeah.
And I've got here dealing with winter casualties. Oh my lord, yeah.
There's a few of those this year, isn't there?
There is,
a bit of a cold winter in December and killed off a few plants.
It is.
So cut back and see what comes back, I suppose.
That's it. I think that's all we can do, really. Give, and as it has been dry, give them a good drink as well. Anything you cut back, give them plenty of water, a bit of feed, a bit of Vitax Q4 or something similar, and lots of moisture around the plants, and just see over the next 6-8 weeks how the plants fare. If they come back with lots of new growth, then you're okay. If, however, nothing happens, then I'm afraid it's time to think about
dig
replanting.
Them up and find something new to put in.
Yeah, indeed. So, and I mean, the plants which are causing most problems, certainly with our customers, has been things like pittosporums, cordylines and phormiums, but there have been things like ceanothus causing a few issues too. So, I mean, we'll all find a few plants I'm sure we'll have lost, but we're gardeners, we just expect that these things happen.
Yeah, that's it. And I guess still a little bit of time before we get into the greenhouse to do a last clean up and de-algae the glass and clean it all up ready for this year, isn't there?
I suppose, if you're thinking about growing your tomatoes and your peppers and maybe a bit of bedding, really, yes, this month would be the opportune time to get that done before you start bringing in your young plants or doing some seed sowing where you need nice, clean, hygiene-filled greenhouses to do all that sort of work. So make sure you're starting with a clean base, basically.
Yep, that's it. And also, it's worth sort of just letting the greenhouse breathe a bit this time of the year. If it's not too windy and it's a nice hot sunny day, get the windows open and that'll get some fresh air in there. And
that's it. And if you've got, I've got a Louvre vent on top of my greenhouse, and that's, I think, coming to the end of its life now. It's about 10, 12 years old. So
so it's only opening half an inch rather than 2 or 3.
So I need to have a look at that. I mean, they're gas filled, so they don't last forever, but they are absolutely invaluable if you're out at work all day and you've got to leave your greenhouse. So Yeah, and just general maintenance, as you say, having a bit of clean up. And if you use something like one of these smoke bombs in your greenhouse as well, which will kill any overwintering pests, do that, but make sure your greenhouse is fully empty before you let one of those off. Yeah, yeah.
And I guess it must be sort of time to start thinking about herbs again, isn't it?
Yes.
I grew some thyme last year, and that did
Great.
well. It took a while to germinate, but it did actually turn into sort of half a dozen plants. I was quite pleased with that. But I guess, things like the chives and parsley and coriander, and I guess even basil now frosts have gone. Time to start thinking about that.
Certainly on the windowsill, that's right. But remember, there's quite a few herbs which you can't buy from seed, so you'll still need to buy some little plants which are obviously propagated vegetatively, so they're either from cuttings or from division. So things like your mints and your fennel, which obviously if you buy fennel at this time of year as a plug plant, it'll make a big plant by summer. So, but as we know, garden centres restock their herbs this month and into April. So a good time to replant.
Get out and get some nice new ones in. And time to dig up and split strawberries.
Yes, so these are for those of you who want a really early crop of strawberries. If you've got a greenhouse or one of these small lean-to greenhouses, you can get a nice bit of warmth. So basically, lift a few strawberries, nice sort of 6-inch pots, some good quality peat-free compost, and lift them with a bit of soil and repot them. Make sure they're not planted too deep, because strawberries hate to be planted deep. And then give them warmth, give them a good water. Once you start to see some new growth, feed them regularly. And you'll be probably a month ahead of those you'd enjoy outside. So,
okay. So essentially, you can prolong your season, so you get them out even earlier.
Indeed, yes.
That'd be nice. I do like home-grown
Oh
strawberries.
yeah, I remember when I was growing up, Peter. There's a gardener just down the road from us, and they always had strawberries by the beginning of June in the greenhouse. So they'd just planted their tomato plants, and in the same greenhouse they had strawberries to eat.
Wow,
how good's that? I've never quite got it to that side, but it's always my dream. Just to grow a few homegrown strawberries out of season is quite a pleasure.
Can you do it with alpine strawberries as well?
So yes,
because they tend to have a much longer fruiting period. But can you force them into coming into?
You could indeed. Yeah, that would be really good. Yeah, obviously it's much smaller fruits, but usually very plentiful. Yes, of course you could.
And they taste so lovely.
And thinking about that, those you can get from seed, so you could actually sow those. You probably have had to sow those last year during the summer to get yourself some nice plug plants for this year. But they would work really well, and such a wonderful flavour, as you say.
Brilliant, great stuff. Okay, well, I think that just about rounds us up for this month, doesn't it, Chris?
Plenty to be getting on with, Peter, that's for sure.
Definitely. Good stuff. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Today's show was brought to you by Buckingham Garden Centre and Nurseries. The show was hosted by Chris Day and Peter Brown. The show was produced by Peter Brown. And our thanks to Chiltern Music Therapy for providing the music. Thanks for listening.
At Chiltern Music Therapy, we want everyone to know the difference that music can make in their lives. From parents and their premature babies in hospital to grandparents with dementia. We provide music therapy and community music services to people of all ages and needs across England. We work both digitally and in person in people's homes, care homes, schools, hospitals and hospices. Find out more at chilternmusictherapy.co.uk.